People think of John E. Fetzer as either a broadcast pioneer or the owner of the Detroit Tigers. However, perhaps the least known fact about his life, even among those who knew him well in business and sports, was Fetzer's devotion to cultivating a deeply spiritual life.
After graduating from college, I briefly worked at Union Carbide, but soon joined John's broadcast business. He was my mentor and close friend for more than a decade. As he once said to me, if they ever write a book about me, the title will probably be The 9 Lives of John E. Fetzer. He was a pioneer, visionary, and entrepreneur in business, and open-minded in his spiritual quest. As we go through my life story, he once said, you're going to find that the word search is one of the most paramount activities in my life. Not necessarily on one subject, but on many subjects. I have never been able to rest on cursory knowledge about anything. I've been searching and searching. So understanding John requires an understanding of his dedication to a deeply rooted sense of service to a higher calling, a noble cause, something inherently good and worthy.
Accumulating wealth, building business empires, and owning a Major League Baseball franchise were all of secondary importance to John. To be sure, he was ambitious, hardworking, and determined to succeed in his business ventures, and he received a long list of prestigious awards and appointments along the way.
John was fond of quoting Albert Einstein, who said, "A paradox can never be solved on the same level from which it was created." He was unconstrained by convention.
Born in Indiana in 1901, Fetzer acquired a telegraph set and learned Morse code at age 10. 2 years later, he built his first wireless transmitting and receiving set. Also at age 12, Fetzer had his first religious experience, a powerful dream in which he was holding on to the feet of Jesus Christ, who shared the message, "I will always be with you." In 1918, Fetzer contracted influenza, an event that had an everlasting impact on his life. Approximately 500 to 675,000 Americans died during that pandemic, which was the most deadly in history. Fetzer was seriously ill and at one point was near death.
I thought from the remarks I heard that I wasn't going to make it, John recalled. I made a commitment at the time that if I were permitted to live, I would devote my life to the spiritual work of the Creator. John was confined to his bed for 9 months and read books on his passions of engineering and radio broadcasting to help pass time. He kept his promise and pursued his spiritual journey and entrepreneurial opportunities with equal vigor. But he went to great lengths to keep his public and personal lives separate. Soon after his recovery, he went on to receive a license for a general amateur radio station. He graduated from high school and in 1921 enrolled in Purdue University with a keen interest in the work of Nikola Tesla, a pioneer in electricity. As I experimented and studied more of Tesla's work, John recounted, I recognized that there are energy waveforms in the physical world, and I began to wonder if there were other more subtle waveforms that we can't see with our eyes.
The president of Emmanuel College invited Fetzer to build a radio station at the college and attend school there. He accepted, left Purdue, and in 1923 established a licensed broadcast station at the college where he served as chief engineer and announcer. During this time, he met Rhea Yeager and married her in 1926. Undaunted by the stock market crash the previous year, in 1930, Fetzer bought the radio station from the college, changed the name to WKZO, and relocated it to Kalamazoo's Burdick Hotel. In the 30s and 40s, WKZO was known to perform live broadcasts from the ballroom. There were also regular sidewalk broadcasts with the public directly in front of the hotel. Back in the 30s, Fetzer designed the entire operation from studio to transmitter.
Times were tough, and he traded airtime for groceries to pay his employees as the nation's economic conditions worsened. WKZO was licensed for daytime broadcasting but desperately needed extended nighttime hours to truly prosper. However, Federal Radio Commission rules stipulated that stations operating at night on the same frequency must be 1,000 miles apart to ensure no interference between signals.
Ever the innovator, Fetzer proposed an emerging technology, a directional antenna of his own design, to solve the problem. But another station protested, starting an 8-year court battle. After 2 hearings before the Supreme Court, the Federal Communications Commission granted nighttime broadcast licenses using directional antennae. This enabled some 3,000 additional stations to go on the air, dramatically increasing the scope and influence of radio broadcasting. Between the wars, Fetzer's business interests flourished as he started or acquired many companies, but World War II raised the critical issue of just how the nation was going to control the flow of news. The U.S. military was concerned that a radio station might slip and accidentally provide the enemy with military information, or perhaps a foreign language station might leak important information. During the war, President Roosevelt appointed John Fetzer as Assistant Director of Censorship for Broadcasting, a position of enormous responsibility that required someone trusted and respected by both the War Department and the broadcast industry. Fetzer strongly supported the censorship board's policy of self-censorship. The war was, in part, about preserving First Amendment rights. Yet no story should jeopardize the war effort. Fetzer kept a framed quotation given to him by the U.S. Director of Censorship, which they both regarded as the Commission's motto. It listed the virtues of a good censor. The quote helped Fetzer to guide broadcasters by the notion of doing right for the greater good.
According to John, one of the most dangerous leaks of the war occurred on August 15, 1944, when 2 million listeners heard broadcaster Arthur Hale say in a nationwide Confidentially Yours program that the Army would split the atom and soon create a weapon. John's office found out that Hale's script had not been checked for code violations. "I had my greatest fight with the Army then and there," he recalled. "They wanted to move in and install censors in every radio station in the country." He held firm in the self-censorship program that Price put in place and John supervised was a resounding success.
Beyond radio, John also found business success in television broadcasting. By 1950, 13 to 14 million TV sets were sold, and television had begun to replace radio as the primary source of news and entertainment for many families. That year, John's WKZO-TV Channel 3 went on the air.
I asked John why he didn't put a station in a big city like Chicago or Detroit, and he told me all the big money was going there. John had a different strategy that might be best summarized by baseball legend Willie Keeler's advice to hitters. Hit 'em where they ain't.
Fetzer placed WKZO-TV's antenna in the middle of a triangle formed by Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, and Battle Creek. This strategic location enabled him to instantly help establish one of the country's top 50 markets. Since national spot advertising is aimed at the top 50 markets, the station's earnings grew rapidly. Fetzer's plan to focus on rural mid-markets proved highly successful. He eventually established numerous radio and television stations in Michigan, Iowa, and Nebraska. During the infancy of the television broadcast industry, complaints from the public about programming and commercials began to surface quickly. Based on his war experience, John Fetzer was convinced that self-regulation was the best way to supervise programming to avoid undue government influence. In 1952, he became chairman of the newly formed Television Code Review Board of the National Association of Radio and Television Broadcasters. All major networks voluntarily subscribed to the Television Code, which prohibited such things as the use of profanity and the negative portrayal of family life. Self-regulation and communal responsibility are clear themes that run throughout Fetzer's life. He viewed them as essential to freedom, and freedom essential to human progress.
Tiger baseball games were a staple of radio broadcast on WKZO radio in the 1950s. However, in 1956, the Briggs family decided to sell the Tigers. This was a great concern to John, as the sale of the team might cause him to lose the radio broadcast rights. John's solution was to organize an 11-member syndicate to buy the team. "I believe in baseball," he said. "I think it does have great value beyond the profit line, and I want to see it survive in the best possible shape." The 1968 baseball season was magical for both the sport's triumph and how it helped heal the city of Detroit, which had been torn by riots during the previous summer. John derived great satisfaction from that championship season.
Fetzer, who became sole owner of the Tigers in 1961, ran the Tigers like he ran all his businesses and life, according to a set of fairly simple principles: hard work, organization, loyalty, and a strong sense of tradition. One of Fetzer's most significant achievements in baseball is little known, and yet it helped transform televised sports. In the early 60s, there was no national television contract for baseball. Most clubs relied on game attendance and the sale of their local TV packages for revenues. There was only a modified Game of the Week package, whereby 5 clubs shared about $1 million from CBS, and 7 clubs split $700,000 from NBC. The other teams received nothing.
John, as chair of the Major League Baseball Television Committee, proposed a national TV Game of the Week contract for the 65 season, where each franchise would share equally in the revenues. But it wasn't easy to get buy-in, and he once told me that getting the baseball owners to mutually agree on something was like herding cats. But John prevailed by demonstrating to the rich teams that although their slice of the pie would be smaller, the pie would be much bigger, and thus their total revenues would increase. He also argued that helping smaller, struggling franchises benefited everyone. After all, clubs need other clubs to play against, or it's 3 strikes and you're out.
In late '65, Fetzer put together an even bolder plan. He proposed a 3-year package that combined the Game of the Week with the World Series and All-Star games. NBC won the rights for a whopping $30 million, which was big money in those days. Fetzer's boldness caused a 17-fold increase in broadcast revenues in just 5 years. He correctly saw the advantages of creating a complete package that included the prize jewels, the World Series, and All-Star games. His pioneering TV deals also helped to cause the value of Major League Baseball franchises to soar. Though it never quite got off the ground, Fetzer promoted his concept of a Monday night baseball spectacular to the major networks as early as 1963, which likely planted seeds for what later became an American sports institution, Monday Night Football. Through the decades of achieving great success in business and public life, Fetzer also pursued his private spiritual life with vigor.
In 1933, he became a Mason and rose to the highest level of membership when he achieved the 33rd degree. In Masonry, pursuing one's own personal vision of God is the goal, and the degrees of the Masonic Lodge are symbolic of ever higher states of consciousness. During the 60s, a time of enormous social upheaval, John wrote on subjects that only a few knew he practiced and cared deeply about. He advocated meditation as a way of forging a relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. It would be decades before such views became widely accepted.
Later in life, he devoted himself to A Course in Miracles, a book published in 1973 that aims to assist readers with spiritual transformation and includes lessons for incorporating the practice of forgiveness into daily life.
John's spiritual search integrated multidisciplinary forms of practice and study. He attended numerous workshops, analyzed his dreams, and consulted with clairvoyants, whose perspectives pushed the boundaries of conventional thinking. He had an intense interest in paranormal activities and supernatural phenomena. As an avid reader, he studied metaphysics, philosophy, and science. He met with some of the world's most notable scientists to discuss their work in medicine and particle physics. His exploration was unconstrained. In his early 80s, he began meditating 2 hours a day.
In the 1980s, John began to wind down his broadcast business interests and also sold the Tigers to pizza magnate Tom Monahan. He used those funds, in fact his entire fortune, to establish the John E. Fetzer Institute and the John E. Fetzer Memorial Trust.
Our work to explore the interconnectedness of humanity is inspired by his lifelong interest in science and spirituality. John once said, "Love is the core energy that rules everything. Love is the one ingredient that holds us all together." Today, the John E. Fetzer Memorial Trust and Fetzer Institute work to preserve his legacy and vision.